Please note up front that this video will not contain spoilers for Metroid Prime 4. As Metroid Prime 4 releases, it's time to ask, with reports of next-level games being involved, were there really too many cooks in the kitchen? Who led this expansive effort? And what does it tell us about the future? And what can we look to infer from the credit length and the budget of Metroid Prime 4? In this video, I'm going to look at the credits and see what conclusions we can actually draw. Now, obviously, I haven't played much at all of Metroid Prime 4 yet, so I'm indebted to those who have shared details about what the credits show. Also, I'm going to be skipping over the voice section, mainly to avoid any potential spoilers for myself, but also I just don't have that much light to shed on the arrangements with voice actors, and this video will be looking at the core aspects of the development of the game. Now, the pre-release news that caused a bit of angst was that 21 studios pitched into support on Metroid Prime 4, to say nothing of the original studio believed to be Bandai Namco Singapore, which was working on the pre-reboot version of the game. And of course, the question is, were there too many cooks in the kitchen for Metroid Prime 4? Well, first up, no, I don't believe there were. Firstly, context is important here. Big games have support studio lists that are extensive. Donkey Kong Bonanza had 19 support studios, to say nothing of the fact that EPD8's Tokyo team appeared to have effectively subdivided into two during the process of that game's development. But the Odyssey team was working on Bonanza since its inception. Tears of the Kingdom, on the other hand, had more than 40 studios pitching in to support development. What about the nature of the people involved, though? Well, perhaps most eye-catching in this list of contributors to Metroid Prime 4 is Next Level Games, one of Nintendo's own studios. Again, though, I don't think this is of particular significance. 1UP helped on Donkey Kong Bonanza. NERD, Monolith Soft, Nintendo Technology Development Inc., and SRD all pitched in to Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Obviously, Nintendo will leverage its internal resources before contracting outside studios if they think they can do something more efficiently. As to why Next Level Games specifically, it strikes me as kind of obvious in many respects. They're English-speaking, and they were the last people to work on a Metroid Prime game, or at least a Metroid Prime game of sorts, in the form of Federation Force. Of the people listed, Matt McTavish, Kevin Yen, and Mark Blanchin all worked on level design for Metroid Prime Federation Force, while Christopher Rice was credited on that game as an environmental artist. Given their history on the series, it makes perfect sense for them to support on Metroid Prime 4 somewhere over the last 7 years it's been at development at Retro. Next up then, let's talk about Nintendo themselves. One of the big projects that I've been working on for the last few months has been a deep dive into the status of the producers at Nintendo. But before releasing that video and actually finalizing it, I really wanted to see where Metroid Prime 4 fell. You see, while Retro and other satellite studios are obviously vital, the coordination of these games all still seems to run through Japan. With Kensuke Tanabe turning 63 in January 2026, and Nintendo's love of succession planning as attested by Kit and Krista, there was a chance, I felt, that we might see some evidence of how future Metroid Prime projects might be managed in the credits for Metroid Prime 4. In this case, the producer is, exactly as we expected, Kensuke Tanabe. However, I was interested to see what would happen with Risa Tabata. Tabata is an interesting person, as she has for a very long time been Tanabe's number 2, but often works as part of a larger and relatively new group of production management specialists who seem to provide general support to a number of different games. However, there is one title on which she did receive an actual producer credit in her own right. Specifically, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, the first Paper Mario game not to have Kensuke Tanabe involved. If there is an obvious heir to Tanabe from the Japanese Metroid Prime 4 stable, it seems that Tabata remains the obvious candidate. However, the fact that she does have quite a diversified role besides working as a producer on that remake does put some question marks over whether she indeed will be the person to pick up the reins of titles like Metroid Prime 4 and indeed the many others in the Tanabe stable of games. Other than that, the credits include from Nintendo translators, interpreters, coordinators, model supervisors, music people, and a number of people on quality assurance. But frankly, there is nobody else who has any other apparent overall very general responsibilities for shaping this game. There is a visual producer, Takeyoshi Sato, who also worked on Luigi's Mansion 3, The Origami King, and a few other games. There are some people from the aforementioned project management team. Perhaps the most striking names are from the special thanks section. Yoshio Sakamoto, Samus's longtime producer in her 2D iteration, leads the list. Akira Sakamoto, also special thanked on Metroid Prime 3 back in the day, is a coordinator who project managed Metroid Prime Federation Force, as well as other games, chiefly, though not exclusively, in Tanabe's stable. The same is true for Hideaki Araki, while Hitoshi Kobayashi appears to have had long credits designing for Nintendo, and Kiyohiko Ando has coordinated projects across Nintendo as well. There are some more credits on Nintendo of America's end, including Devon Pritchard, but there really is not a huge number of Japanese credits on this one. This really is a project that was based in America. So let's go over then to Retro Studios. Here it's actually very difficult to infer too much as well. Unlike many Nintendo games, there's no distinct director credit, but a number of different departmental directors. The credits start with art and cycle through a number of fields. Michael Kelbar is obviously the CEO, and Dylan Jobs is credited as the Vice President of Development. Bill Vandervoort was the first credit on the list and received credit as the design director, and he was also the design director on Metroid Prime Remastered, as well as a designer on Metroid Prime 3 and both Retro Studios' Donkey Kong Country titles. Jeff Moreau came onto production seemingly around 2022 as the lead producer, but the recommendations on LinkedIn suggest that this is more of a managing workflow situation than Nintendo's apparent tradition of producers who are effectively the creative drivers of the project Tanabe style. Swedish creative Johnny Lundstedt appears to have joined Nintendo at the beginning of the decade and is the senior art director on the game. Meanwhile, Eric Sebesta is the director of engineering, having previously worked at Bethesda and others. Vandervoort, Moreau, and Sebesta are the three that Wikipedia have nominated as directors, and they are obviously the leads of the three major departments and given director credits, even if they are not credited as the director in a singular form. Nevertheless, while it was possible to identify Mark Pacini as the director of Metroid Primes 2 and 3, this is more consistent with Tropical Freeze and Metroid Prime Remastered in having more distributed crediting. All of which leaves as an open question where Metroid Prime will go without Tanabe, if indeed Tanabe does want to step back. It's possible that Tabata and the Retro crew will be able to take it from here, but it will be a striking departure for Nintendo not to have the heavy influence from Japan. In terms of Retro's credits more broadly, at a quick look I count just shy of 250 people from Retro, not including contract testers, special thanks, and various other studio subcontracting arrangements. This is a large number, but it's about 2/3 of the number of Nintendo people who worked on Breath of the Wild for the original Switch, though to be fair, Nintendo's crediting is quite opaque in some cases, and these Breath of the Wild numbers could well include Monolith Soft people and other people who joined the crew on a temporary basis. We do know just from the people we've met so far that many of these people were hired in recent years and so weren't contracted for the whole of the development period. So 250 people seems like an upper estimate for the number of people working on the game from Retro specifically. Now, cost is a difficult one to ascertain, and I'm not at the present time going to be, or even aiming to do, a ballpark estimate of the cost breakdown, just as I've done with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The well-connected Kiwi Talks has an estimate of $100 million as the budget for the game, and that seems perfectly plausible to me. Now, as well-sourced as he is, he obviously hasn't cast an eye over the specific balance sheet, but for comparison, when I did an estimate video of the cost of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, my running total of estimates was 86 million for Breath of the Wild, and for Tears of the Kingdom, 134 million, both before marketing expenses and such like were factored in. Those were also incredibly rough estimates, but I think it's still likely that Metroid Prime 4 was more expensive than Breath of the Wild, but probably less expensive than Tears of the Kingdom, despite its protracted development time. So a few principles to consider here. Firstly, operating a US studio is likely to be more expensive than a Japanese one, all things being equal, because of exchange rates from Nintendo's point of view. Because of Nintendo's global cash flow, they can ameliorate this difference through clever actions on the currency market, but it would still inflate their total costs to have to provide funding for something which in Japanese yen will be more expensive. Secondly, Metroid Prime 4 is a more recent game, so these aren't real-term figure comparisons. 9 years of American inflation has a fairly significant impact on the figures. Thirdly, while Retro is a subsidiary, the economies of scale, which is to say the savings that are gained from working at a bigger scale with larger numbers of people, are going to be far greater in Kyoto, where Nintendo have such a wealth of experience right on hand that any problems they should be able to solve relatively quickly. How do you bottle the value of having an Aonuma in the building with his immense experience when it comes to Zelda? Then there's the capability of people like tech lead Takahiro Dota to take what they did on Breath of the Wild and adapt it for the world of Ring Fit Adventure, thereby ameliorating the costs of one game by using it to fund a second one. I'm sure Metroid Prime 4 will also defray costs in this way, and you could argue that Metroid Prime Remastered was an example of this already, but having such a large concentration of developers in Kyoto makes seeing these opportunities easier, and it also makes the individual costs of one title harder to fully adjudicate. Ultimately, the biggest drivers of cost are likely to be people and time, and while Retro has a reasonably significant number of people, they also took a lot of time. Of course, by Nintendo's recent development periods, this might not seem all that long. From the reboot, it's a 7-year development cycle which isn't drastically out of whack with Mario Kart World, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and other recent titles. As far as we know, if Bandai Namco Singapore were on the first version and that studio only had scores, not hundreds of developers, it might not have ever ballooned to the stage of development where Nintendo needed a very significant staffing pool, and so it might have been relatively inexpensive when the game was cancelled, albeit in the scheme of things still a major cost and a major decision for them to do. Judging by the hiring from Retro around 2020, it feels like they probably spent 2019 largely figuring out what they wanted from this new version of the game, and that probably required far fewer staff, or at least the staff they did have may well have been focused on Metroid Prime Remastered. It's also likely that some of the staff credited were working on other projects concurrently, not least, as I say, Metroid Prime Remastered, but for all we know, other Retro projects that are still gearing up. If we assume that they averaged 150 staff members a year for an average of 5 years at an average of $80,000 a year, that would be perhaps $60 million spent, although that could potentially be on the low side and would certainly be exclusive of location, security, taxes, plus all those subcontractors and many more costs that would be incurred. Of course, marketing also would expand this significantly, although most of Metroid Prime 4's marketing has been absorbed into promotion for Switch 2. All things considered, taking all these costs into account, you can imagine $100 million being quite a conservative estimate. Realistically though, counting promotion and other costs, I'd guess that the game would need over $2 million in sales to break even in raw terms, but of course, the game itself is just the tip of the spear. The amiibo, the art book, and I dare say other content that they will push off the back of this title in years to come will doubtless have far higher margins and will make sure that the game proves profitable for Nintendo, even if the initial sales don't quite reach those lofty numbers. I'll have more on Retro, Nintendo's producers, and more in due course, so please do subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to the channel's Patreon supporters, and thanks to you for watching. I'll see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.